All right, so the data frames that we have looked at so far, we have read in from files, or perhaps we've read in from a website, and now we want to also talk about creating and modifying data frames. So it's also possible to create a data frame from other objects, and the most common way to do this is to use a dictionary, where the key of the dictionary is the name of the column, and the value of the dictionary is the list of data that you want to include. So you can think about this as, this right here. If we want to think of this as a kind of a dictionary-like object, then gene name would be a key, and then we'd have a list of all of the gene names, the 13,669. And then the next element of the dictionary, the key would be worm base ID, and then all 13,669 values for that, et cetera, et cetera. So anytime you can get data in that basic shape, you can create a data frame out of it. So let's see an example of that. So we'll just create test data, and we'll create a dictionary. So we use the curly brackets to open and close, and then we give it a key. So we'll call the first column name test, and then we'll just give it some, junk data. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then other data, and then that is equal to 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so test data, this is a dictionary. So again, if you wanted to access the data, you could do something like this if you want a specific element. But you can actually just use this in order to create a data frame object just by sending it to the constructor. So data frame, this is the name of the object. So just as a reminder, we have this data frame object, and so this is actually, tied to pandas. So, if we look at pandas, one of the things that you can create, so this is a constructor of a class. So it's capitalized, so this means it's a constructor of a class. And so if we wanted to use this, we can simply send it the test data. And so now we see what is returned is a new data frame type object. So, we could save this, for example. And so now we have a data frame object that we can manipulate. You can also specify an index. So there's this alternative argument, this optional argument that you can supply the constructor. So remember, data frame is a constructor. And if you want to, you just need to send it a list that is the same size as all of the other data. So now you see that we have this data frame object, but instead of automatically constructing an index, so if you don't send it an index, it just automatically constructs one where it just increments numbers 0, 1, 2, 3. Now we've named it kind of the way we want. And so we'll make sure to store that as our data frame. So just as a reminder, you can access data using the loc attribute. And so you send it the row name and then the column name, and then it returns the value of the cell. So you can actually use this in order to modify the data table as well. So if we send it this information right here, it sets it equal to 3. And so now we notice that this cell has actually been changed. And you could also do it that way as well. Anytime you're able to access the individual data of it, then you're able to modify that exact cell. You can also add new columns. So if you wanted to, so we have this data frame, so it is constructed of 2 different columns and 4 different rows. If we wanted to add a column, we can do that pretty easily. So we just, so if we tried to do something like this, we would get an error because this column doesn't exist. But we can use this in order to say, okay, we want to create a new column, and the values are going to be this list that we send it. And so now we notice that, okay, awesome, we have this new data that has been appended upon the data frame that we formerly made it. You can also, for example, create a column out of existing data if you wanted to. So, one of the things you can always do is you can do expressions like this, for example. And so you'll notice that we took the test column and we added it to the other column. So 1 plus 6, 2 plus 3, 3 plus 2, 4 plus 1. And again, we could add this to the data table by giving it a column name. So something like this. If you want to manipulate, so sometimes you might want to manipulate a column by performing some sort of function on it. So let's see an example of that. So import math. Math, one of the things you can do is a square root. So if we did a square root of 5, it returns the square root. So if we tried to, for example, try to take a square root of an entire column, we get this error because the square root function doesn't know how to operate on a series type object. So just as a reminder, dt that if we do something like this, we have this series type object. So math.square root has no idea how to do that, but pandas actually supplies us with a method in order to run a function on all of the elements of a column. And so if we wanted to, for example, to take the square root of all of the data in this column, so if we wanted the square root of 3, the square root of 4, square root of 5, and the square root of 2, then we can use this apply method, and then we just send it the name of the function. So as long as this function takes in a single argument, then we are able to run it on every single element. And again, we could store that data by simply doing something like this. And I should not have put that equal sign there. And so now that I got it right, we can basically, we keep adding this data kind of over and over and over again. And again, you can combine these things together. So, if you look at something like this, we say take this column right here, new data, take the square root of it, and then add that to this other data column. And so now we have this, so 1.73 plus 6 is equal to 7.73. So we're able to kind of further do more and more operations on this table in order to analyze it in kind of ways that we want to do that. So that's some of the basics of analyzing it. So that's how we can add data to a table, and then we can also use that data in order to perform functions on it and kind of like customize how we add all this data together.